Oh, good evening, and welcome back to the Poe Museum. I've just been enjoying some of Poe's tales of mystery and imagination. And have you noticed that a lot of his stories just abound with twins, doubles, reflections, and doppelgangers? Just look at The Fall of the House of Usher. Twins, Madeline and Roderick Usher, living in a house with two eye-like windows, the entire house perfectly reflected upside down in the tarn beneath the house. The story begins and ends in exactly the same spot. Or look at the black cat. Two identical black cats. Or better still, William Wilson. But a man tormented by his evil twin. Or is it his conscience? Or maybe his reflection? With all this talk of reflections and mirrors, it gives me an idea. Why don't we devote tonight's episode of the Curator's Crypt to a very special mirror in the Poe Museum's collection. So here it is. Edgar Allan Poe's wife's, Virginia's mirror. Now, she was the love of his life. He married her in Richmond in 1835, but she suffered from tuberculosis for the last 5 years of their marriage, dying in early 1847 at the age of 24. But you can imagine her once standing just about where I am, looking at herself in her mirror, putting on her very toxic lead white makeup to make herself look nice. And this is the mirror she had with her at her home in the Bronx. Poe moved there a year before she died because he thought the fresh air of the countryside would help her. The Bronx was the country back then, about 14 miles outside New York City. And if you visit the Bronx today and see the Poe cottage, you'll see a replica of this mirror hanging just above the bed where she died. So imagine that. This mirror was witness to her tragic final days. And shortly after her death, it probably would have been covered with black fabric. It was a Victorian tradition, still practiced in some parts of the world. There's various explanations. People attribute different powers to mirrors. Some thought that if the spirit, having freshly left their body, saw themselves in the mirror, they might get trapped. There was another belief that if the spirit saw itself in the mirror, it might tarnish the mirror. Kind of like we see right there. But for whatever reason, after she died, Edgar kept the mirror. And he took it with him on the road as he was traveling. Towards the end of his life, he told his mother-in-law he didn't want to go back to the Bronx. He didn't want to be reminded of the life he'd had with Virginia. But he kept her ring and his fused together and continued to wear them until he died. And he also kept that mirror in his trunk. That's right. This trunk, the one he had with him at the time of his death, the one that he carried with him on his lecture tours, the one that's said to have held most of his worldly possessions at the time of his death, things like his clothes, his notes, and his wife's mirror. So you can imagine he was using that mirror when he was getting ready for his performances, when he was putting on that waistcoat back there, tying his cravat, fixing his hair, getting ready for his next show. That's the mirror he would have had right up until the end. Of course, he left the trunk in Richmond just before he died, and eventually went to his sister, who passed it down to her foster niece, and she's the one who passed it down to the Poe Museum here in Richmond. So if you'd like to see this witness to history, come here and check out the mirror for yourself. Just try not to get your soul trapped inside. Well, thanks for joining us this week. And just remember, if you find yourself tormented by your evil twin, just read Poe's tale, William Wilson, to find out how to extricate yourself from the situation. And if you'd like to support the Poe Museum, just become one of our patrons at patreon.com/Poe Museum, where you'll have access to exclusive content and you'll be able to see our videos before anyone else. We'll see you next time in the Curator's Crypt.